Hey guys, all right, just waiting for that to come up. Thank you. Welcome to week two. Hopefully, everyone had a good first week of doing this. I got to make sure I'm recording this because sometimes what happens is I start recording and things aren't recording. Just want to double check. All right, cool, we're good. All right, sweet. All right, so hopefully, everyone had a good first week. This was a nice introduction to the course. Looking for your feedback. Let me know if you think these are good. I know I think there was a little disconnect the first week. Everyone thought there was an actual class and it was through Zoom or some sort, but it was not set up that way. I apologize if that's what you were looking forward to. Traditional online class is traditionally, you'll get PowerPoints and you'll get assignments and so forth, and that's it. And there's no video, there's nothing. But after the whole COVID thing happened, I was teaching 3 classes in person, and what I ended up doing is giving the students, let them decide whether they wanted to do the traditional online class or whether they wanted to do a Zoom class. So what my Monday night class was a introduction to programming class with 20 students in the class, and we ended up going with a Zoom. We did a live session every night. It usually lasts about 2 hours. But the thing was, out of 20 students, I only had 5 students a week. And that's not what I was looking forward to. And then students wanted it to be recorded so they could watch it later, and I get that. But my Tuesday night class, I had 5 students in it. They decided not to do it. They wanted to go the traditional way. And then my Wednesday class, which is my mobile development, I didn't really give them a choice. There was only 5 students in the class. So traditionally what we would do is we'd meet for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to talk about what we were working on. So this one, when I was thinking about it, I seen it was a low number class. And I thought, me providing you a video on the lecture, me providing you a video on the lab, would be helpful enough. And so hopefully everyone has been fine with that. And that's kind of the course that we'll move forward with that program and see how things work out. I personally think that doing the videos is helpful. It's important to me to provide you something instead of just saying, here's a slide, read it. Anybody can read a slide. I want to add extra thought process on doing this information. So that is, and if you have any questions or you want to talk about stuff, please let me know. I'm more happy to help out. So before we get started, hopefully everyone had a nice weekend or week. So it looks like we're moving into the yellow stage of potentially here soon. But nothing really changes with the COVID, with the yellow stage. But we're out of the red and we're on our way to, I think they said June sometime will be the green stage. It's going to be a while till things get back to normal as possible. And hopefully when the semester starts in the fall in September, things are somewhat back to normal. I don't know. It's an interesting time for sure. All right, guys. Again, get started. So this week we have a lab, and this week we also have this lecture. This lecture will talk about stuff. The lab is, I had just recorded it not too long ago. It's about 40 minutes long. I take you guys through Tableau. I show you some of the different visualizations that we'll talk about today. Called normal visualizations. And what you guys are going to do is take that and apply it. There'll be a data set that'll be in your assignment this week. And that'll be the data set that you'll use, that we use in the video in the lab. So if you have any questions, please reach out. Pretty straightforward stuff just to get started. All right, so let's talk about the history of data visualization. So that could be a lot of things. So I apologize if I'm looking up and down. I'm looking at my screen. I have a 32-inch flat screen here, and it has everything, and I can see it without my glasses on. So if I'm looking up and down, I'm not looking away from you. So outline is talking about weekly visualization summaries. So hopefully at this point, traditionally what I would do is if this is a live class, I would have you present in class your assignment from the previous week. But since you guys will already be doing that on YouTube, that's fine. This week we'll talk about the history of data visualization. We'll talk about what's going to happen next week, and then the lab work, which I just mentioned. So the history. So this is really interesting to me because, you know, way before hundreds of, I don't know, X amount of years ago, you know, they started the little things. You know, they started sketching stuff in stone, you know, the cavemen. And, you know, how smart were they? I mean, did they have data analytics? So the little things that they were doing would be considered data. So you look at these little images, and these images mean something. Me personally, when I look at it, it's data. Is that the types of animals that they've seen? And to me, it's very interesting because, you know, what dinosaur is that? What dinosaur is that? That tells us a lot. It's pretty awesome, pretty exciting stuff. So history, first known map, 12th century. So this is reference to T-Guard 1999. So it's just a reference of where it comes from. First presentation graphics, William Playfair, 1786. So you ask yourself, sorry, put my glasses on. You ask yourself, sorry, I have to end that for a second. I had to step away for a second, my bad. All right. So getting back to this, my apologies. So first presentation graphics, William Playfair, 1786. Who was William Playfair? He was a Scottish engineer. Also worked as a secret agent for the British intelligence. He was maybe somebody came up. He was during the War of France. So that was the time that he was a British intelligence agent during that time. Lost my words there. They say he's the founder of graphical methods of statistics. So he's the founder who came up with statistics. And this is, you know, 1786. And, you know, there was not much known about stats at that time. In 1644, Michael Florent van Lengren, a Flemish astronomer, is believed to have provided the first visual representation of stats. So if you look at here, it doesn't look anything fancy though, but this map right here, hopefully you see it here, this right here shows, it's supposed to represent the distance, oops, went too far. It's supposed to represent the distance, the range of estimates of distance between Toledo and Rome. So in Italy, it's supposed to represent the distance between point A and point B during that time. How did they come up with that number? I'm not sure, but it's interesting. It looks kind of basic, but you know, we've advanced so much further at this point. So a little bit more about William Playfair, widely considered the inventor of many of the most popular graphs that we use today, such as a line, bar, circle, and pie charts. Did anyone know that these 4 visuals that we're using today are from 200-300 years ago? To me, that's pretty impressive. Contour plots, scatter plots, and others were invented during that period of time. So if you look at this graph right here, 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, these are types of charts that they were drawing or putting together. So obviously they didn't have a computer, so they were using, if you've ever taken like a drafting class in high school or middle school, you had a piece of paper to kind of look like this, and you would have to, you know, have different plots and stuff like that. So they probably had sheets like this potentially, and then they would use these little bar graphs to come up bar graphs to describe, you know, like a statistical number of how they improved on stuff. I mean, so this right here has a time series comparison aimed to show wheat price decline regarding the increase of wages, integration of bar charts and line graphs. So imagine how powerful this type of data was at that time. I mean, people had to analyze what they were spending, just like today. You know, it just wasn't well known about how all this worked, but pretty impressive for someone to come up with a way to measure this information at that time. So this is so this is 1821. From 1800 to 1850, think about the modern beginnings of modern graphs. It looks like a lot of information they put into it. So this graph right here shows the transportation of commercial goods along one canal route in France by a variable width, divided bars, Charles Minter in 1844. So just looking at this graph here, it describes a lot of information. It's kind of hard to read, to be honest with you, but at that time, there was a principle of what they were trying to accomplish, and I think that it accomplished a lot of information. And this is also old, so it might have you know, faded in due time. 1850 to 1900, the golden age of statistical graphics. So this right here, to me, represents a map area, which is impressive. How did they get the aerial view? How did they do that? To be able to come up with that map of, I apologize, the location. So each death is a case of a bar. The spot map is geospatial based mapping. Jon Snow, 1854, and we all know Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, different Jon Snow. So very popular guy, I guess. So this is pretty impressive. 1850 to 1900, the golden age of statistical graphics. You can see here Napoleon's marching and retreat routes, army size, temperature during the retreat. So this was very important during this time to be able to have somebody collect this type of data, because they were able to capture, maybe this was a maybe this is potentially a way that they were able to, you know, attack their opposing forces by having this data, understanding, hey, during this time when this happened and that happened, this happened, and this is how it helped us out. This is data that could be used even in that time. Believe it or not, we don't know how the data was used and what purpose it was used for, but data does align. That was early on. Maybe at that time they didn't have all that data or really knew what they were kind of shooting for. They just, someone collected it, and I'm sure in due time that helped them out. 1850, 1900, golden age. So a prolific author, renowned sociologist, of civil rights advocate, co-founder of NAACP, Historic and Black Lives, was also a pioneer of data visualization. So this person right here, W.E.B. Du Bois, was a pioneer of data visualization. We'll learn more about that. Right here is another, like a little sheet of history. Look at a series of stat charts illustrated here. You'll see like the United States map there. You'll see a little pie chart. So this information right here represents a percentage of teachers, ministers. So these are types of different professions during that time. So very interesting information. So if you're looking at it, you see there was more teachers, but teachers and housewives was the most job opportunities that were available at that time. A little bit more mainstream information. So this looks like it was a cutout from a very old newspaper. It shows the cylinder bore, the valve arrangement, and ignition system. So it shows the ups and downs, the percentage, which this is good because it's able to capture how things did during that time. And then they have other plot maps over to the right, which provides a good analysis. And at that time, people, you know, probably looked at this and says, "What is this?" But in reality, it was a good way to measure stuff. 50 to 75, the rebirth of data visualization. So Tukey, 1977 publisher. He held that much emphasis of stats was placed on hypothesis. testing. A more emphasis needed to be placed on using data to suggest hypothesis to test. And that's how it is today. You look at sports teams, you look at NFL, you look at baseball. For example, baseball, go to Moneyball, the movie. They started using data analytics to decide how they were going to play. It wasn't about who could pitch or, obviously who could hit that home run or whatever the case was. It all came down to data analytics. How were they going to play in certain situations? This happens and that happens. And how do they get it? By collecting the data. And then once you collect the data, you do something with the data. Okay. So right here shows the objectives of EDA. So it suggests that hypothesis about the causes of observed phenomenon. So you observe something happening and you use the data to collect it, and maybe a good outcome happens. So you're thinking about assumptions. What are assumptions that you would make? You support supporting these different techniques that are available. Provide a basis for further data collection through surveys and experiments. Surveys is collecting data, and then absorbing that data and figuring out how you're basically presenting a story is what you're trying to do. Some typical graphical techniques used today in EDA is the box plot, run chart. I won't read them all. Scatter plot, stem and leaf plot, parallel coordinates, etc. So these are some of the ones that are available, and I believe these have hyperlinks on them. Yeah, it's going to pull up a page. So when you click on it, I'll provide you guys an actual slide as well as this video, so you'll be able to click on it and see what's a box plot and where they come from and so forth. And then the same thing with graphical, statistical graphics. You can click on it and go out to a link. History, 1983, good year. The visual display different types of information that's available. So think about this, how far back history, who's telling what story. So when you look at the story here, 1914, brief history of data visualization. 1900 and beyond, they have the pie chart, they have the different charts that are available at the time. You go to I'm going further back. Let me go 1914 first, and then you go up to 1977. You have the old personal computer, which looks like the Mac, one of the Macs. Then you go to 1990 and beyond. That's like the pie charts. 87, people start using Microsoft Excel. That was new at the time. So now another way of collecting data, how it's connected to a personal computer. You look at 2000 till today, things have changed, and we keep evolving as a society, how we collect data, what we're doing. So now we have these phones. We get these phones that collect data, and these phones are being used to collect information. So what's going to be next is to watches. What follows that? I don't know. So interesting stuff. Traditional visualizations, and this right here are the traditional ones they use on a normal basis: line, circle, pie chart, bar chart, histogram, time series plots, contour plots, scatter plots. Now these are all the ones that go all the way back to William. So we talked about William Playfair, I think right here, 1786. He was already doing this back in 1786. So, that was what, 200 some years ago. And here we are talking about it again. So I'm looking for you guys this week to use three of these to create, based off the data that I provide you, based off the lab, to create something with that data. Nothing specific, but just something just to show that you've had some experience in it. Line chart right here. This is a good one. We talked about this in a lab. So we will talk about it in a lab, but this is a good one because it shows you a rate. So for example, so the sprints that I do on a 2-week basis, it's important for me to have something called a burn down rate. And what we do is we start off with X amount of hours and so forth that we have, which is equivalent to based off of people's capacity. So people have anywhere from 60 to 80 hours based off of, well, usually they have 80 hours because they may be working on multiple projects, but each person should have up to about 80 hours in a 2-week sprint. And we have, so for example, I break it down by services. So one of our services is called Secrets Management. And Secrets Management has 5 engineers on the team. And so each engineer is using 80 hours over a 2-week sprint. So we take all the work that they're assigned to, and we use this type of graph to show how they did in that period. So they start out here, have all this work. And so what we do is we try to slim it down and do like a chart like this to show whether it went kind of like that, burned down, or did it kind of just stay at a plateau. And that right there tells a good story. It tells us, okay, what work were they doing? What challenges did they have? And what I typically do is I collect all this data and I store it, and then over quarter basis, I'll do monthly and then I'll do quarter basis and say, hey, quarter number 1, this person right here was killing it. But then in quarter number 2, something happened because he or she's time just didn't do well. So this tells us a story. What happened? We could just look at that chart and say, okay, in quarter 2, something happened. Was it something personal going on? Was it something, and in this case, we could look and say, hey, quarter 3, everything was awful because COVID was happening and people, were experiencing something they never thought they'd experience. So that tells a story. All right, that was a lot. Here's the circle one. To me, this is really confusing, but you have to really look at it from a different angle. This one right here is the pie chart. So we're all familiar with the pie chart, probably one of the more popular ones. The first graph that you're seeing there on your screen is a piece of paper that comes from a different time. I have to put my glasses on to see this one. So this is from way back when. So this looks probably 18th century. They did a lot of work. But then over to our right, we have something that's more modern with a pie chart, breaks it down by percentages. This one right here is a bar graph. So as you see here, it breaks down by territories. So China, Germany, Poland, breaks it down by human losses of war by 2 countries. So the percentage, and they have like in the millions and so forth. So this right here is a good graph because it provides that bar chart that you're looking for. Histograms, these are very popular as well on a history. So histograms are used to show a distribution of variables, while bar charts are used to compare variables, the multiple variables that may be available. So this one right here provides ranges of data grouped into bins of intervals, while bar charts are plot categorical data. So bar charts, pie charts, they're all based off some type of category and what's the percentage and so forth. Time series plots. So this is based off of the time period. So we have 1950 up to 2010. We have the percentage that things are being utilized. So that's what that is. Contour plots are like this. These are used in, if you guys could come up with a good example of contour plots, but they could be used in certain circumstances like biology. So when I work for a biotech company, this is something that they would utilize when they're measuring cells and how many cells are being utilized and how many are doing this and that. So this right here was a very popular one at the time. Scatter plots, these are also very popular. This could be popular when you're trying to run some type of analysis, some type of predictive analysis if something happens. So by looking at the plot, how everything scatters out, you can see how things are doing well. So for example, let's say if we use a scatter plot for COVID-19 that's happening, I think that would be perfect because you could identify how we did over a period of time and how maybe the more micro balls that we have here or scatters that we have is when it's all together. That's when it was doing really bad things, and as it expands, and that's when things are improving and it's kind of separating away. So that is, in a nutshell, is a short lecture on the plots that, or not plots, sorry, the different types of graphs that we're going to be using this week. So this week, what I'm looking for you guys is to create 3 graphs. Last week I had you create graphs based off of stuff that you've already had, but this week you're going to create 3. You're going to use the data that I provide you in this module, and you'll use it and connect it to Tableau, and then you'll push it out to like a PDF or a PowerPoint. But I'm looking for you guys also to present this information next week. So what I'm looking for, since it's not a live class, I'm looking for you to make a video and present this data on the screen. So use a video screen. You can use your phone. I don't really care. Whatever's easy for you, I'm fine with. But all I want you to do is present something, what you did, why you did it, and also tell me what you thought about it. Was it challenging? Was it fun? Did you learn something from it? So that to me is important. Importance of the context, and then choosing an effective visual. That'll be next week. So weekly 2, prepare and present 3 visualizations from the traditional ones that we just talked about, and you'll use Tableau to produce this information with the data. References are right here, and that's it. So that's it for the lecture for the week. I'm looking forward to next week. Every week goes by quick. So that's it. That's all I have. So if you have anything you need from me, please reach out. You have my information. Hopefully you guys have a good week. Thanks for watching, and have a nice week.